But if some idiot, decided to go out there and just flout the laws.
The critical part is that a lot of people believe or thought that we should find out one factors.
It's not actually a mechanical failure. It's a chain reaction of policy breaches, enforcement gaps, and systemic complacency.
The discipline of drivers is important.
Hello everyone, welcome back to yet another episode of Beyond the Headlines, the go-to space for the top stories that made the headlines and more. My name is Amalina Kamal.
And I'm Hazmin Hassan. Now, every few weeks, we read about another tragic highway crash, a runway lorry, an overturned bus, lives lost. The scenes have become all too familiar.
Yes, and despite years of discussion, expert recommendations, and political promises, the question still remains. Why are Malaysia's roads still very much dangerous, and especially for heavy vehicles?
On June 9th, a devastating collision between a University Pendidikan Sultan Idris or UPSI chartered bus and a Perodua Alza on the East-West Highway claimed 15 lives. The bus was returning from Jerte Terengganu to the university's main campus in Tanjung Malim after the Aidil Adha holidays. A total of 48 people were involved, with several suffering serious injuries. The bus was found overturned and the MPV severely damaged.
Now, this particular tragedy actually has sparked public outrage and renewed scrutiny over road safety enforcement as well as vehicle compliance. Now, in particular, questions are being raised over a 2015 circular by the now defunct Land Public Transport Commission (SPAD) that recommended key safety measures. Now, in the last 10 months alone, more than 800 lorry-related accidents have been recorded, averaging 3 incidents per day. Now, these accidents have contributed to more than 5,000 deaths compared to more than 6,000 fatalities throughout the entire previous year.
Yes, and now Transport Minister Anthony Locke is facing criticism, with calls mounting for the reinstatement of SPAD, which was dissolved by the Pakatan Harapan government in 2018 during Locke's previous tenure as Transport Minister. Once again, the government is pledging stricter regulations, mandatory speed limiters, onboard cameras, and tamper-proof GPS systems.
But none of this is actually new. Now, experts and stakeholders have long proposed these interventions, and so the question again still remains: why haven't they been fully implemented? And is the problem one of cost, enforcement, or agency coordination? Or is it something more important and systemic?
And earlier, we had an interview with the Malaysian Institute of Road Safety Research, Miros chairman, Professor Dr. Wong Voon, to understand this predicament.
I want to go into how can the government balance industry profitability and long-term environmental and public safety here, especially when it comes to costs, right? How much do you think the government can actually save if they actually invest in road maintenance or better sort of environment setting for drivability here, right? As we know, the Great Jeli Highway, there's been a lot of cases in the past month. And that's already a cause for concern.
Road design, road construction, road maintenance all need management. For instance, that the road surface is going to degrade, marking is going to be gone, and then it will never be as safe as it is with those good pavement, good lane marking. And then the barrier, of course, we know it will degrade as well. So we need maintenance. And how are we going to maintain it? It depends very much on how we manage the resources. And that dynamics should become part of the change or the dynamic of how these infrastructures being maintained too. And not to mention about improving it, upgrading it as well. If you look at carefully as a country, it is very important for us to understand that moving goods and people from one point to the other point effectively, efficiently, it is good for the country. If we use a very lousy way of moving, means the wrong vehicle, wrong type of mode of transport to move people or goods, what we are paying, we're paying a lot more in terms of harming our environment, burn more petrol, for example. Not safe, meaning to say, in that transport system that we are talking about here, accidents happen, crashes happen. When that happen, the whole flow, as we know in KL, you know, one small incident, you jam up everybody. And that everybody's burning petrol, everybody's spending time not doing something productive. And it's not good for the whole economy. So that's why the involvement of the government to make the transport, the network, the transport system safe is utmost important. And as the industry player who use the road and running their business operations, it is also very important. One incident like what we have recently, we all definitely going to understand that it definitely will have a significant impact to the company.
Not just economy, but also image and sort of like trust, especially to our systems, right? To our services. Right now, for visibility's sake, right? I just want to understand how often is Miros's engagement, especially with agencies such as JPJ, Puspacom, in having to ensure that the public at large are able to, benefit from road safety engagements.
Thank you. Of course, we appreciate collaboration, and we do so-called have some of the initiative to have the engagement, discussion, and also sharing with respective agencies. That's very important aspect of what we are doing. We do conduct studies and to find out some of the what I call critical factors, how to improve. Maybe some initiative can be carried out, etc. And talking about possible benefit of implementing some of those, that including some of the regulatory requirement on certain safety devices, as well as implementation of such. More important thing also for us to understand that it is not only just the government agency, but the company, the industry also, we are not putting aside for them to really understand the benefit of making safety as their business operations. So people, a lot of us might think or believe that, well, I can't do much. My driver is out there. He decided what he wants to do. Then he decided to take risks. Then what can I do as the boss or as a company? This is a wrong so-called mindset that if the business operation that you are running and you cannot control, which means you are not running the operations. In the past, we have been pushing and talking about those vehicle, the company, the operators should able to manage their vehicle while they're out there with the use or the help of the telematic systems, GPS navigation system together with the control behind. Then you're able to know your bus, where your driver drive your bus or your truck, your lorry with the goods, and how they do it on the road. In the event of so-called bad drivers doing something funny on the road, you should be able to identify and take action against it, because they are running your business operation with your asset, of course, including the driver and your customers. So a lot of those technology are now available, and then the operators we will hope that very much they can make use of it to improve their operations, therefore making safer, but at the same time reduce their operation costs by making the movement of the goods of all their customers in a more effective way.
But Prof, it's like the bigger question here is that this implementation part, because as you mentioned, the technologies are available, but the implementation is very slow. So what aspect must we put into, especially when concerning having to reduce collisions on the road here?
That's why, as I mentioned, some of the technology is available. For example, the what we call the autonomous emergency braking systems, which you might not see the object in front of you getting closer, and then the machines, means the vehicle take over and brake for you. So it's there. But again, to get it to the real benefit, it needs time, because for example, this technology is very unlikely to fit into all vehicles, all buses or all trucks. Yes, and that need time.
Right, so it's an upgrade,
So
basically an upgrade of fleets here. We need
Yes.
to look into that now. Okay. What sort of costing are we looking at if we were to have a total upgrade?
Now, people will always ask that questions about safety must be expensive. We have proven that in fact it's not really the case. So when that so-called safety technology being quote unquote normalized in a way, having bigger volume or mass in the markets, and that a lot of times it has been from time to time that has been proven that in fact it has already become very affordable. The technology I mentioned about the autonomous emergency braking, even our border car, they already have it. So it is not that only those expensive, for example, these Volvo or Mercedes-Benz can equip with it, but in fact, if we make it, when the mass is big enough, the price and the cost always would be able to bring it down to be more affordable.
Do you think incentives such as insurance breaks, tax credits, or are there already such incentives to kind of boost voluntary compliance among operators here? Do you agree with that? And if, let's say, we need to penalize basically an operator or an individual, do you support a tiered penalty sort of system?
Yes, definitely. There's always what we call push and pull factors, or you probably can mention about the carrot and stick. It's definitely has to come together. So we have enforcement as the stick, but we should able to have something to get people to understand and for them to buy in to make their so-called operations on the road safer. Insurance is definitely one of them. We talk about incentive in a way. It's also a recognition about what you are doing, and we believe a good management system of the company should be able to demonstrate or demonstrated to their client, and including their stakeholders, and of course, insurance industry should take the opportunity for them to come in to help out. So we should work together to prevent any further life being lost on the road.
I just want to understand, because given your research, especially when it comes to accident reconstructions over the years, if you've had any, what sort of recurring systemic failure do you see most often? Is it human error? Is it enforcement gaps? Or is it at least the poor fleet maintenance? Or just data tampering here?
In fact, as I shared with you earlier, that throughout, I've gone through more than, I think, 400 over crashes, and some of the big crash in Malaysia, I led some of these initiative and go into the analysis of those crashes. So almost I can say that in fact all of them, all these important factors that I have just shared just now, they are all interacting each other. So the critical part is that a lot of people believe or thought that we should find out one factors, then they become the main. Which I would like to convey the message to everybody, is that because all these are working together, in fact, we just need to have one change that will change the outcome. In the other word is that if all systems, as I mentioned, the man, the machines, and then the medium, and how we manage it, and if all these are in good place, just for example, one of the factors somehow skewed a bit. For example, the driver was a bit tired. Now, because of other factors coming to help out, then the life could have saved. And it is very important for us to understand that safety is a system issues. Transport is a system. It's not that one guy, one vehicle. We are all on that system, in that systems that whereby influencing each other, which means that when it is in a system, we should solve it as what we call systematically, and that we usually coin in road safety, we call that safe system approach.
Thank you so much, Professor Dr. Shaw Voon Wong, for joining us.
And I think is also our public also play important role. Probably you can convey that message as well. A lot of times, as a customer, we say we procure a service. For example, this charter, this bus. Are we putting our customer rights that we demand safety? Sometimes we don't. And we should start doing that. And for example, this bus, say we charter this bus and with this driver, should we demand a bit of background of the bus and the driver? I think we should.
Another 15 lives lost, Amalina, another round of blame and promises. But how many tragedies must we see before real change happens here?
Yeah, exactly. And you know what, Haswin? Road safety isn't just about rules. It's about political will, enforcement integrity, and a culture that actually refuses to accept death at the cost of doing business.
And until systemic reform takes priority over convenience and short-term profits, Malaysia's roads will still remain dangerous, especially for those just trying to get home in the case of the students there.
Exactly. But I suppose for us as medias, right, we'll continue to ask the hard questions, especially because behind every crash, I believe, statistic is a family shattered and a future stolen.
Yes, unfortunately. And this isn't just a transport issue, it's a national one. And it's high time we start treating it as such.
I believe so. And unfortunately, and timely enough, because today, Haswin, June 12th, the preliminary findings on the FRU crash was out. And what we're looking at isn't just a tragic accident, it's a systemic failure on multiple fronts.
Yep.
And actually, it does mark a dark time in Malaysia's road safety history.
Completely agree with you there, Malina. When you peel back the layers, it's negligence dressed up as an operational routine. The FRU truck didn't even have basic seat belts in place, not for the rear cabin, not even for the driver or front passenger. That alone is indefensible, in my view.
Reading through the FRU crash report, right, that's widely being reported. The oversight was that unfortunately it turned deadly. Loose objects inside the cabin became projectiles during the impact and basic physics, yet completely unaccounted for in vehicle safety protocols.
Yeah. And then there's the lorry, the catalyst in this incident. It was grossly overloaded. The maximum permitted weight was 24 tons, and it was hauling nearly 41 tons. We're talking about gravel and sand that it was carrying here. So that's a 70% access. And you can imagine the sort of momentum and impact it will carry with it going down at that speed. So we're not talking a margin of error. We're talking about absolute disregard for regulations here.
Exactly. And if it wasn't enough, the lorry was actually technically approved to carry coal, right? Not gravel, with very specific design specs, like a maximum of gate height of 762 millimeters. And for the lorry that was involved in the accident is more than 1,000 millimeters, if I'm not mistaken. The lorry had actually gates, again, 1,000 millimeters tall. It shouldn't have been on the road, let alone operating in that sort of configuration.
And in this case also, Amalina, let's not forget about the GPS issue. EP88 rather, requires all commercial vehicles to have a functioning GPS system installed. Now this lorry obviously didn't, which means it couldn't be tracked, monitored, or held accountable in real time.
So now we actually have a non-compliant vehicle carrying the wrong cargo, operating well beyond its safety threshold, and without GPS. It's not necessarily an outlier, and actually it does expose the cracks of our existing enforcement mechanisms right now.
Precisely, you put it really down to the T there. And then there's the driver's initial claim of mechanical failure, specifically the steering. But according to the ministry, the steering brakes, suspension, tires, all were actually in working order. The only notable finding was that the brake drum was overheated, and likely that happened from the weight strain and the emergency braking during the crash.
So in that context, it's not actually a mechanical failure. It's a chain reaction of policy breaches, enforcement gaps, and systemic complacency, right?
Exactly. And the first thing was that it was carrying something it wasn't supposed to be carrying, gravel. And on top of that, it was compounded by the fact that it was overloaded, overweight. And because of this negligence, this sheer just utter complete negligence out of no regard for human safety, for lives here, people lost their lives. Yeah.
People died, actually.
Yeah.
And the new thing about it, or at least the latest development about it, is that the cabinet is set to review this week in terms of the extensiveness of our road safety measures here. But the question here again is, will this trigger a policy overhaul, or will it be another report that fades into the background and quietly into Malaysia's archives?
Yes, and if there's no decisive action, mandating seat belts in all enforcement vehicles, fast-tracking dashcam regulations, clamping down on haulage abuse. We're just waiting for the next tragedy and wasting our time, really. What we're really seeing here is not a mechanical failure, but a failure of compliance, oversight, and discipline. And that's where the conversation needs to go next.
Right, I do agree. And actually, that's exactly what we raised with Datuk Sri Siong, former Transport Minister, earlier prior to the recording of the show. In the conversation that I had, he spoke candidly about Malaysia's road safety, our culture, enforcement gaps, as well as discipline. We need to be looking at this issue as a national one. So let's cue to Datuk Siong's interview.
Must be the whole of nation approach, where the commitment of the government, this enforcement unit, and all the stakeholders, including the bus company, okay, and policy-wise, we can just encourage them, or in terms of some form of compensation or encouragement to them, right? Because if you want to introduce any new policy, that always comes with certain costs, correct? So often when the government wanted to impose something, they will say, oh, because the budget is concerned, you can't do it. Okay? So in this case, the government, first of all, must have the political will, then have to make sure that enforcement will be carried out consistently. And all these stakeholders must realize that the importance of the policy implemented. I mean, once it is implemented, is for the betterment of the road users. I mean, just to protect them.
Okay.
And when you can do that, then only the entire campaign or the awareness will be there. It's not easy.
The corporate liability provisions here, do you think that Malaysia should invoke them, especially when it comes to crashes involving corporate-owned fleets?
Yes, of course. That will help help the government to address this issue. Because this one, the discipline of drivers is important, right? And the attitude of the company also. You force them to do speeding or to make more trips, then that can be the consequences. So all these, we must put a stop. For instance, you go to overseas, you go to London, the driver will tell you, sorry, this is more than 9 hours, I cannot work more than 9 hours. They must say a break. Whether we are serious of doing this.
Tapi Datuk, can you give a little bit of insight? We know the circular about having to impose this GPS on buses and vehicles, right? It's not being enacted and enforced. What are the gaps there?
First of all, of course, the initial stage, there were some appeals from the stakeholders, especially the company. And then after that, when you face this COVID, the operation is practically stopped, right? So when you want to do it post-COVID, then the problem of cost again, because it's just during the recovery period. So now, when is the best time to do it? And then if this is the real threat, then we have to do it to save more lives. Yeah. But my time is a bit different because it's abnormal period where when I was a minister, 7 days later, already MCO, Then by the time I finished my tenure as minister, it was about 4 or 5 months after our to reopen our borders, you see. So the entire situation during my tenure, almost altogether 33 months, and 2.5 years we were dealing with all this COVID. So it can be a bit different.
But then it's like saying, because there's not much crashes or activities or that this sort of engagement has not been fruitful. What has been done in the back end to kind of continue the policy making, the shaping, even having to strengthen the regulation further?
Yeah, I think that's why you need to have regular meeting and the commitment from all stakeholders. I think that's important.
Okay.
So everyone, that's why I say the whole of nation approach is important. So that make everyone realize that one life is actually very costly. But they treasure this. They think that's the best thing to do for a country. And then all these losses can be converted, can translated into billions. Every time if they are casualties and then somebody died in the accident, and we are going to compensate more in terms of damages, in terms of life, So all these, it can be quantified in terms of dollar and cents.
Would you agree in having also SPART to be reinstated?
Okay, first of all, whether you reinstate SPART or you strengthen the current APAT, that's up to the government. But you must have the proper structure of APAT. Because APAT, as far as I know, is still under contract, many staff. So when you think about your future, it's still uncertain. So you will hardly get those committed professionals who come in. That's the biggest issue.
When you talk
the
about,
government have to come up.
understood. But when you talk about committed professionals, are you also saying that the current
People don't want to work. People don't want to work for this company for 2 years, and without knowing the future after 2 years.
In general, do you think speed limiters, black boxes, real-time telematics can actually address this errant drivers sort of situation? Errant drivers.
Yes.
You feel so? Okay. So it's not
I
just a
think
stopgap measure.
speed is the main contributor, I would say.
Okay.
Second is about the driver's attitude, of course. And third is road condition engineering. That one, from time to time, government have to really examine. I mean, they have 3E approach, as I said: engineering, enforcement.
Okay.
The third one is education. You know the law. It doesn't mean that you will follow. This 3E approach is very important.
Now, there you have it. Malaysia's road safety isn't just another topic that should be brushed off. Hazwin, I believe we will be circling back to this because, even last night we had, or at least let's just not talk about last night. I think almost daily we've been having or hearing reports related to tragic incidents involving heavy vehicles, right? I myself am very much afraid to have this long road trips, cross-country. So I don't know how you feel about it.
Well, for me, fortunately, I don't really take long trips. Not as frequent as I used to be, only because I'm always stuck here with work. But, I do feel I would be very apprehensive about making long journeys, making long trips, using public transport, especially buses. Because it does, it just has a long history there, a string of accidents and crashes in the last 10 months, I believe. I think it's over 800 accidents so far in the last 10 months. So one does have to kind of sit and think twice, perhaps, especially when you're about to buy your tickets. You might want to think twice about which operator you're buying from. Their buses, are they good? Are they in good condition? What kind of fleet do they have? Are they old buses? Are they new? Because I think that's the sort of line of thinking that one has to do now before you get on a public bus.
Right. I mean, and it's very exhausting because you're talking about even having to go for services, for commercial services as such.
Yeah.
But we also have to think about, even driving on the road because, someone else's fault or negligence might impact our lives.
That's true.
We might not even know.
That's true. And, it's very apt that you said that because you might be taking all the necessary steps and all the precautions. You could do everything on the list, check everything on the list. But if some idiot, decided to go out there and just, flout the laws, have complete disregard for other people's lives, unfortunately, you will be met with, something
very tragic.
untoward. Of course, you wouldn't want, I don't want to have to report on something like this again. But there needs to be a deep kind of soul-searching reflection here, because you can have regulations, you can have all the rules, you can have all the systems in place, the technology in place, but if people really don't want to change, and the attitude remains the same, where you have drivers or bus operators who really don't care about people's lives. other than just the profits that they're making, what good is it? What good is the governance there? What good's the government? Yes, some people are going to place the blame on people like the transport minister, who's overseeing everything, who has to make sure that legislation is in place, enforcement is done so that we can bring down the accidents. But again, it has to come from within.
True.
Yeah.
And the 3 E's that was highlighted throughout the discussion, especially from both of our experts here, as well as Datuk Sri Siong. So the 3 E's here being education, enforcement, as well as engineering. And when it comes to road safety, it's not one factor over the other. It's a complete system that we have to actually look into. Now, that's all for this particular segment. Don't go anywhere, because we'll be back with other news report that has been breaking the headlines this week.
Welcome back. Now, the Tan Sri businessman at the centre of a 143 million ringgit corruption scandal has finally had his statement taken by the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission after a week-long delay due to hospitalisation. In one of the country's most explosive financial probes in recent years, the MACC is intensifying its investigation into the alleged misappropriation of Sukuk funds, originally earmarked for a major highway project in the Klang Valley. What they've uncovered is staggering.
Right. And as of Wednesday, auxiliary police were seen blocking the entrances to his home as MACC officers recorded his statement over the alleged misuse of funds. Now, the Tan Sri had been warded since June 7th for medical treatment following a series of raids since late May, which saw the MACC seizing assets and cash totaling up to 143 million ringgit. Now, for those who do not know, the Sukuk Fund is an Islamic compliant investment type fund, which are typically Islamic bonds or financial instruments.
Yes, that's right, Malina. Sukuk funds invest in instruments that adhere to Islamic financial principles, avoiding interest or riba in Arabic and other practices prohibited by Sharia law. Now, among the things uncovered at one of the Tan Sri's many properties that were raided by the MACC were a well-stocked bar complete with a wine cellar. Now, let's just say, Malina, the Tan Sri has quite the palate for fine wine.
What's your poison, Tan Sri? No, I mean, like, it's actually a jarring contrast, right, Hazwin? The funds is being raised under the banner of Sharia compliance, allegedly linked to someone whose personal indulgence tell a very different story.
I suppose his poison is very expensive, especially from the collection, just seeing from the collection that he has at home, or more than one home, apparently. But I guess in this case, you know, as many stories in the past go, it's always the people at the top, the wealthiest, who are in a position of power, who have excessive amounts of wealth, access to everything and anything they want, where I guess in a way you could say they are being tested. I mean, there's the old adage where, you know, with great power comes great responsibility. But in this case, the Tan Sri unfortunately didn't carry out his responsibilities. And instead went down the complete opposite road here. But yeah, I mean, in a way, you know, people in this position of power and wealth, they live in opulence and most times in excess of things they probably don't even need.
And when we look at this particular investigation that MACC is on, it's all about ethical finance and whether or not it meets ethical behavior, right? Because in the end, no amount of sukuk structuring can actually hide what's in the cellar. I'm sorry.
Exactly. Well, anyway. you couldn't have put it better. That's what it is, really. Sometimes their vices, you know,
might take over.
Exactly. And their vices kind of match the wealth as well. So opulence and excess of things in life. I mean, for sure, if you were in that position, I would say probably if I had that kind of money, I would want to have the finer things in life. But at the same time, in this case, we know now that the money that funded that sort of lifestyle was very, very questionable.
Right. I mean, to be fair, we don't know if the funds directly funded the lifestyle, but we have to actually consider that this sort of contradiction actually raises bigger questions about integrity.
If you took religion out of the picture,
It goes back
again,
to ethics.
Again, it's just ethics and not using something dishonestly.
True.
That's all it is.
Well, unfortunately, everyone, that's the end of today's episode. I hope that today's discussion had brought a little bit of insights for those who might not necessarily be in the know. Of course, if you want more reports, don't forget to turn on the notification bell, because you'll not only get NSC Beyond the Headlines update, other NSC Online's news reports will be delivered to you. Now, I'd like to thank Hazwin for being on the show.
Thank you, Amalina. Always a pleasure.
Right. And do follow us on our socials. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, as well as Threads and TikTok. Now, my name is Amalina Kamal, and I'll see you next week.